Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into a seriously fascinating moment in human history. We're traveling way back in time to look at how a massive, relentless, days-long rainstorm actually acted as a literal crucible for early human innovation. You see, a storm like this completely halted the daily hunt and forced our ancient ancestors indoors for long stretches of time. We usually picture early human innovation happening out in the field, right? But as we'll see, some of our absolute greatest leaps forward happened simply because we were stuck inside, just waiting out the weather. To really grasp what this meant, I want you to picture this for a second. You were tracking a herd you just found yesterday. You've been following their movements, reading the environment, and tomorrow was supposed to be the day you finally close in. But then, out of nowhere, the sky just opens up. And I don't mean a quick afternoon shower. I mean a slow, relentless downpour that shows absolutely zero sign of stopping. It completely ruins all your carefully laid plans. You're instantly forced to stop everything you're doing and just wait.
And the situation goes south pretty fast. It rains heavily through that entire first night. By the time the second morning rolls around, well, hunting is completely off the table. The tracks you were so carefully following, they're gone. Just completely dissolved into this thick, lethal mud. And out here in the wild, the environment suddenly becomes incredibly dangerous. I mean, a slipped foot or a broken ankle in this kind of mud is basically a death sentence, especially as you start to notice the local stream by our camp creeping dangerously over its banks.
Okay, so let's get into Section 1, the deadly downpour. When a storm like this hits, priorities change in the blink of an eye. It's wild to think about the sheer contrast between their reality and ours. Today, we just don't experience rain the same way. For us, a rainy day is the ultimate cozy background noise, isn't it? We grab our blankets, turn on our glowing screens, and just chill out. But for prehistoric humans, rain meant something completely different. It meant no hunting, navigating that lethal mud, watching rivers rise, and honestly, above all else, it meant the fire, the single, fragile thing keeping the cold and dark away, was suddenly fighting for its life against the wind and the wet.
So when things get that bad, seeking out a dry cave is really your only option. But doing that brought three immediate, terrifying dangers. First, the deadly cold that just seeps right into your bones. Second, sudden and unpredictable flooding. In some of these caves, the rushing water came in so fast that the people who went inside literally never came back out. And finally, company you definitely didn't invite. Sometimes that precious dry shelter was already claimed by large, hidden predators who were looking for the exact same refuge you were.
And I want to highlight this number for a second, 20. That number is absolutely vital. Wet skin loses heat over 20 times faster than dry skin. If you get caught out in that downpour without a way to dry off and warm up, hypothermia isn't just a possibility, it is a rapidly approaching certainty.
Which brings us to Section 2, keeping the fire alive.
When the storm hit, you might think finding shelter was step one. Actually, scratch that. The absolute first move was saving the fire at all costs. Fire literally meant life. Without it, your shelter is just a cold, dark tomb. It was so crucial that some early humans were known to carefully carry a live coal from camp to camp, just to ensure they never had to start from scratch in the wet. And we have incredible evidence of how seriously they took this. A famous frozen traveler discovered in the Alps was carrying this exact specialized kit, a flintstone, some highly flammable fungus tinder, and carefully preserved backup kindling. This was a dedicated, life-saving pouch designed for one single purpose, to ensure they could spark a flame when the environment was totally working against them.
But getting a spark is only half the battle, right? You gotta feed it. To keep that flame alive while the rain poured relentlessly outside, they had to go through this incredibly painstaking process. They'd gather soaking wet logs and then sit there in the dim light, splitting them open using only simple handcrafted stone tools. They had to literally chip away the soaked exterior just to extract the precious, dry core of wood hidden deep inside, all just to keep their lifelines burning. All right, moving on to Section 3, the Stone Age Workshop.
So, once the fire is secure, and the immediate life-or-death dangers are handled, you suddenly have a group of highly intelligent humans with something they rarely ever had: free time. With the panic over, they finally had a moment to breathe. And look at what they did with that time. We have evidence of a 100,000-year-old pigment workshop where they ground ochre and mixed it in shells. They carved these incredibly delicate bone needles with tiny drilled eyes, which is super delicate work that simply cannot be rushed. Someone even engineered dedicated tools for twisting plant fibers into cordage, basically creating rope, which revolutionized everything they did from then on.
They even focused on comfort, building layered bedding out of grass mats and purposefully topping them with insect-repelling leaves. They weren't just surviving the storm, they were spending their time building the future.
Now let's look at Section 4, Art and Storytelling.
With survival locked down, the fire burning nice and warm, and their tools perfectly crafted, we start to see this amazing transition from just physical survival to a massive cultural spark. The mind starts to wander a bit, and here's the part that nobody really expects. Imagine the scene. The storm is raging outside. The whole group is huddled up near the entrance. But eventually someone picks up a small glowing lamp, turns their back to the firelight, and actually walks away from the safety of the group, journeying deep into the total, suffocating darkness of the cave's inner chambers.
And what they did in that darkness is just astounding. They rendered these deep cave paintings of animals, horses, lions, with a fluid, masterful skill that literally still stops modern people in their tracks today. It's this beautiful realization. You only paint the walls of a cave when there is absolutely nothing left on your survival task list, but you still have hours and hours to kill. It's the birth of art, born entirely from necessity and free time.
Meanwhile, back near the entrance of the cave, imagine a band of 15 to 30 people. They are packed in tightly around that large central fire at night. The wind is just howling outside. They've finished making all their tools, and they're left with absolutely nothing to do but look at each other and talk.
And what the older folks shared around that fire wasn't just casual small talk. This was literally the classroom of the ancient world. They were passing down vital survival knowledge to the younger generation. But they also began inventing myths, stories about the rain itself, trying to explain those chaotic forces raging outside. This is a practice so profound and so deeply rooted in our psychology that almost every human culture today has some kind of rain myth that was born from people sitting closely around a fire through exactly that kind of terrifying storm.
And finally, Section 5, After the Storm.
Eventually, though, every storm breaks. The swirling, dark clouds over the jagged mountains finally clear out, and as our ancestors looked out of the cave, they saw a radically changed landscape waiting for them. The rain, which was this lethal threat just a few days before, actually left behind some incredible gifts. The softened mud now held absolutely perfect, crisp animal tracks, making the hunt easier than ever. Natural stone basins, some of which they'd actually purposefully deepened over time, were now brimming with clean, fresh drinking water. And incredible protein sources, like termites, would swarm right out of the ground after a heavy rain, providing abundant food that required zero tools to gather. You just had to show up at the exact right moment.
So when the sky finally cleared entirely, our ancestors stepped out of the cave mouth back into the warm sun and got straight back to the relentless work of survival. But the crucial takeaway here is that they were not the same people who had run into that cave a few days earlier. They were forever changed, both culturally and technologically, by their time forced indoors.
I want to leave you with this final, really profound thought. Imagine our ancestors watching that single glowing ember of their fire slowly fade to black as morning broke. That innate human instinct to take a moment of forced stillness, a moment where you are literally trapped by the weather, and turn it into art, tools, and stories worth keeping, that resilience might literally be the reason why any of us are here today at all.
So, I leave you with this question to ponder. The next time a literal or metaphorical storm ruins all your carefully made plans and forces you to stop, ask yourself, how can you channel that ancient human instinct? How can you turn your own moments of forced stillness into something incredible? Thanks for learning with me today, and keep exploring.